Hey everybody, welcome back to Race of History. We're going to get into part 3 of the Soldier of Three Armies Sabaton History. If I have time, I have a video later today that I want to get out that I have essentially like a interesting sort of moral question about. It's in regards to World War II. It's in regards to the Dachau concentration camp. It's a much darker subject than I normally cover on the channel, but I had somebody send me a video about it yesterday. I don't think I'm going to do that video because it was super dark. Um, but I'm having a couple of people go through some other ones, so I'm hoping that I can find one that's maybe a little bit less in depth on what exactly happened. But basically, it's just a question that I want to pose to everybody, and I'm really interested to hear what answers people have on kind of where the line of morality is, and in regards to that subject. So that will be out later today, if I can get it out later today. And so that'll be what's coming out. Soldier of Three Armies, and then that one. But we're going to start here. Sabaton History, Part 3. Let's get into it.
Today on Sabaton History.
Part 3 of Soldier of Three Armies.
Yeah.
Well, in case you didn't see part 1 or 2, we are recording this over Skype because of the corona thing going on. And yeah, that's why we're here right now. Regular business will resume as soon as possible.
As soon as we possibly can. And for now, enjoy part 3 of the saga of the Soldier of Three Armies. This is part 3 of 3.
Joachim was playing the hell out of that guitar stand. I mean, out of that mic stand.
Of Soldier of Three Armies. Now, this is episode, like parts 1 and 2, I am not filming at our studio in Bavaria. I'm filming in my home, in my living room in Stockholm, Sweden. And my friend Ryan is doing the camera. Say hi, Ryan.
Hi, Ryan.
It's still always funny. And our lighting is basically whatever lights we have from around my apartment. Okay, down to business. By the beginning of 1946, the world, on the surface, seemed to be finally at peace. But in reality, it was no safer place than before. The Second World War was over, sure, but the fragile alliance between the United States and the Soviet Union had fallen apart. Now an iron curtain descended over Europe and soon separated the whole world into opposing ideological camps. Although Finland had once again preserved its independence, as we saw in parts 1 and 2, the Soviet Union was slowly clenching Finland tighter and tighter in its grip. The Finnish Communist Party, now heavily funded from the USSR, was growing in strength, and Soviet agents operated freely throughout Finland. Lauri Törni was now 27 years old, a well-known and well-respected war hero from 2 wars. But that put him in the sights of the Valpo, the Finnish political secret police. The Valpo was by now firmly under communist control. There had been several roundups targeting decorated veterans, high officers, and politicians. They found themselves under investigation for war crimes on orders from Moscow. 1,500 Finns were found guilty in show trials. In April, the Valpo arrested Lauri Törni. His cooperation with the German secret police was the only thing the Valpo could actually pin on him, but they accused him of planning to overthrow the Finnish government. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison for treason. It was not...
I'm pretty sure if he wanted to overthrow the Finnish government, he probably could have done it. I mean, it seems like the dude can just do anything. But man, how unfortunate. There's another video that's a Sabaton History, I believe, that was about kind of this same thing, right? The war ends, you have fought for your country, basically, like you are fighting on behalf of your country. But because of the political situation, in both cases, I think it was the Soviet Union. Because of the political situation with the Soviet Union, you find yourself kind of on the wrong side of things, right? Just for the crime of having fought in the war. Like it's a really kind of bizarre situation. And I mean, that would be terrible if you were one of the soldiers that, gets picked up, gets put in one of these show trials and sentenced for the crime of doing what you were asked to do at the time. Like that's brutal.
Not until December 1948 that Finland's now President Juho Paasikivi finally had the power to call off the witch hunts and pardon those who had suffered under them. Lauri Törni was a free man, but the country for which he had risked his life so many times had no place for him anymore. He was an ex-SS man, an ex-resistance fighter, and now also an ex-convict. Many of his old comrades had escaped the Valpo by fleeing to Sweden and from there across the world towards South America or the United States. Soon, there were little Finnish communities abroad that helped other Finns escape. In the first half of 1949, Törni wrangled with the decision to leave. Finally, he packed his bags, took a friend's passport, and made for the Swedish border. There, he forced a taxi driver at gunpoint to drive over the border, and then Lauri Törni made a straight line for the Swedish immigration office. Once in Stockholm, he kept a low profile, and he even fell in love with a woman named Maria Palm. They were soon engaged and even planned their marriage. Maria actually traveled to Finland to get Törni's uniform and medals for the wedding ceremony. But
Wow.
Lauri Törni could not offer Maria a future, not in Sweden, where Soviet agents were still on his heels. He decided that he would make his way to the US, but his borrowed passport would not allow him entry there. So he headed for Venezuela first. In March 1950, Törni boarded a ship to Caracas, leaving behind the love of his life. In Venezuela, Törni met one of his old Winter War commanders, who got him aboard a ship bound for the US. Off the coast of Alabama, Törni jumped into the sea and swam to the shore. Now he was in the US.
Wow, what a crazy story. And this is relatively common, right? You see these kind of pipelines from, parts of Europe that, like Germany, it's not really post-war, it's more what was done during the war. But you see these pipelines from places around Europe that kind of start forming going to South America, right? And this is relatively common. In fact, some of these communities still exist to this day, where nationals of, whatever European country, after the war, made their way down to South America and just stayed there. And so now they have descendants that are down there. But yeah, what a crazy story. He doesn't even have a passport, or he doesn't have a passport for him. So he's just doing whatever he can to kind of finagle his way into the States, even if that means leaving his, I guess, potential wife behind. Yeah, just a crazy story.
Illegally, sure, but at least he was there. With barely enough English to make himself understood, he made his way to New York, where the Finnish-American community helped him with the immigration services. However, this was 1951, and Cold War America, starring Senator Joe McCarthy. The fear of communist spy rings and double agents in all walks of life was a hallmark of an age of deep paranoia. Once more, Törni's past caught up with him. In July 1951, the FBI arrested and interrogated Lauri Törni about his service in the Winter War, about the SS, about his prison sentence. Deportation seemed imminent, but at the last moment, a bill associated with the Lodge Act was pushed through Congress, allowing Törni and other persecuted foreign veterans to apply for citizenship through service in the U.S. Army. Lauri Törni filled out his declaration of intent and was sworn into the American Army. Since most Americans had problems handling the name Lauri Törni, and as a way to make a fresh start, Lauri Törni became Larry Thorne. Now, the U.S. Army was specifically interested in Winter War veterans, and the reason for that is that they were experimenting with a new branch of service, the Special Forces. It was expected that if the Cold War with the Soviet Union suddenly got hot, large parts of Europe would be overrun by the Soviet Red Army. So battles would be fought behind the enemy's lines through espionage, reconnaissance, and sabotage.
That one particular thought process, that if the Cold War turned hot, whole swaths of Europe would be overrun with Soviet forces, is literally the focal point for like half of what the US military doctrine and weaponry and all of that is about in this time period, right? When you look at some of the Cold War plane designs or weapons, things like the special forces, there's this idea that if the Cold War turns hot, which is what this is all in case that happens, that there was no way to stop the massive waves of Soviet troops, right? Like, sure, the West may have the technological advantage or whatever, but as far as manpower, the Soviet Union had so many, and they had just watched this in regards to World War II. And so the thought process was there was not going to be a way to stop them from those waves just rolling over like large amounts of continental Europe. So you started to have these things put in place of, okay, well, when that happens, when the Soviets start spreading out and taking large parts of Europe, then what's our move, right? And so you have things like this, like the special forces of like, okay, well, the Finns did this really well with these small unit hit and run tactics. Things like this were the things that specifically the U.S. were really starting to get interested in when looking at a potential conflict with the Soviet Union.
For that, they needed veterans who already had experience with such methods.
Cross the water, a new start. War still beating in his heart. A new legend has been born. Started out as a wrestler, soon promoted well deserved. Changed his name to Lauri Törni.
By 1954, Lauri Törni was now 35, nearly twice the age of most other recruits, but he was still in excellent shape. The hardest thing in boot camp was actually learning the English language. After cold weather and mountain climbing training in Colorado, he was then sent to airborne school. By September, Thorne had passed all required tests and was accepted into the Special Forces at Fort Bragg. It was the beginning of the elite units known as the Green Berets, which we all know of, but whose mere existence then was still kept a secret. Fast forward to 1963, and post-colonial Vietnam was fought over between the Communist North and the American-supported South. North Vietnamese guerrilla fighters infiltrated the South, attacking both South Vietnamese and American forces. They transported their men and material along their major supply route, known as the Ho Chi Minh Trail. However, most of the trail was hidden from the air, covered by thick canopies of jungle trees. For someone to destroy the trail, they'd need boots on the ground. Lauri Törni would be part of a specially schooled operational detachment known as an A-Team. Yeah, I know, to fight the insurgency. This was what he had trained and lived for. Didn't matter if it was subarctic Karelia or the tropical jungles of Vietnam. His first assignment brought him to a camp near the Cambodian border called Chao Lang, and it was straight out of Apocalypse Now. Far away from the eyes of public or high command, Chao Lang was a lawless area. The camp had been attacked and nearly overrun 11 times in just the past month alone. As Thorne looked around the camp, he spotted a North Vietnamese flag on a hill nearby and made it his first mission to tear it down, to make it clear that there was a new sheriff in town. Officially, they were to respect the Cambodian border, but in reality, this was bandit country full of guerrilla fighters. Thorne immediately reorganized the system and ordered an aggressive stance against the enemy. His mantra that a good defense was a strong offense meant that he would attack the enemy wherever he showed himself. Similar to the winters in Karelia, the terrain dictated the battle in Vietnam. brute force meant little inside the jungle. And once more, Thorne's daring and unconventional thinking showed results. He ambushed the...
Yeah, this is very interesting because my initial thought was that it would be really hard to translate what he did, during the Winter War with what he would be doing in Vietnam. It's like it's a totally different situation. It's a totally different enemy. Almost everything about it is just totally different, right? But now that I'm like hearing this, it makes me think like actually it seems like it translated particularly well. And that sure, it's not snow, but he's going about it in the same way and is uniquely kind of cut out to lead here because of the experience in warfare that he had had before. I just feel like I don't know, this seems like it translates a lot better than what I initially thought.
ambushers and booby-trapped their supply routes. After his 180-day-long first tour in Vietnam had ended, he and everyone else in his team received the Purple Heart for wounds taken in battle, but they came back alive. Thorne was also awarded the Bronze Star for valor. This would not be Thorne's only tour, though. American High Command wanted to deal the Ho Chi Minh Trail a crippling blow. This time, they planned on using small reconnaissance teams to infiltrate Laos, to locate Viet Cong supply depots, mark them for airstrikes. But since operations in Laos were political dynamite, they needed the best of the best. Larry Thorne was top of their list. On October 18, 1965, 3 King B Special Forces helicopters made their way towards the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Larry Thorne was now 46 years old, and this time, he was only there to make sure that the insertion would go as planned. The 3 helicopters moved forward, flying low above the treetops. But as they approached the landing zone, the weather went bad. Rain clouds hung like steamy curtains over the surrounding mountain ridges. Thorne was about to call it all off, but then the weather cleared for a moment and the men were dropped into the zone. Thorne's helicopter circled high above them. He chose to remain in place until the team leader gave the radio signal, but by then, the weather had turned again. A storm was approaching. The King Bee was an old model with outdated instruments. At first, they were headed north. Another helicopter trying to follow their radio frequency noticed that they suddenly made a 180-degree turn. Then they were gone. The King Bee had vanished. Reports that Thorne was missing reached headquarters soon after. 56 search and rescue missions were mounted, but they found nothing. No crash site, no radio contact, not a trace of what had happened.
And, I mean, you can understand, it's in the middle of the jungle. It would be hard to find anything, right? I mean, at least I feel like it would. I feel like it would be almost impossible to find anything out there. Search and rescue missions must have been just a total bitch to do. Honestly, that's one of the reasons why Vietnam is kind of interesting to me, but particularly why I feel like the soldiers who fought in it had, I don't know, they were just in a very different position than maybe prior wars or wars since then for the U.S. And it's because of the jungle element. It's because of the guerrilla fighting and things like that. But the fact that they sent so many attempted, essentially rescue missions, that's, even though they didn't know if they were going to be, what they were going to be rescuing, the fact that they sent so many rescue missions shows you how highly he was thought of by the military hierarchy who is making the call to keep going back in there and looking, right? Because how long do you go? Like 5 rescue or search missions or 10, 20? No. 50, just crazy.
So Larry Thorne was listed as missing in action. It was assumed that the helicopter had crashed in the jungle and there were no survivors. A year later, on October 19, 1966, he was officially declared dead. he was posthumously awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. Rumors, of course, circulated.
Yeah.
People could simply not believe that Larry Thorne, the legend, had disappeared. Many hoped that he was still alive somewhere, but they also feared that he might have been captured by the North Vietnamese, or worse, turned over to the Russians. Others half-jokingly said that maybe he simply walked out of Laos and started a new life again somewhere else. I mean, he'd done it before. In the late 1990s, a task force finally found maybe something. A crash site not far from Thorne's last known position. There they found the remains of a crashed king bee. They located some bone fragments and teeth, but these were too old and too few for reliable DNA identification. They had also lost 2 other king bees in that area. So, could this really be the right crash site? On September 7, 1999, the remains were recovered and brought to the U.S., but in 2003, the files were officially closed. Who knows? Over the years, friends and comrades met and remembered Lauri Törni, aka Larry Thorne, a man who had excelled at combat literally like no one else, and a soldier of 3 armies.
You're kidding me. They never found if he was, like, they never verified that they found him out there? Is that for real? They still to this day have not for sure verified or found his body? Like, what the heck? That seems crazy today. Like in the 50s and 60s, that makes far more sense. But in the modern day, that just, I don't know, that seems crazy. Even in the, 1999 or whatever they said. That just seems crazy that they knew the area kind of and didn't find anything. Or didn't find anything that verified that it was him. Somebody let me know if they for sure have not found him.
Now, this is quite interesting because a few weeks ago we did Into the Fire with Per, and that's your only song that's about the Vietnam War, like the whole song, right? Yep. But obviously what we just saw today is about events that happened in Vietnam.
That's true, actually. I hadn't thought of that, actually. But, yeah, that's where he ended his military career and life, I guess.
Is there any special reason for you, or is it just a chance that you haven't written more songs about Vietnam? Because you've written a lot about World War II, for example.
Oh, good question. No, I don't know, actually. There should be. I mean, so many stories come across from there, but I think it comes down to that we've turned into doing more and more thematic albums.
Yeah.
Like we did now, The Great War. So
interesting to write something about something from the Vietnamese, like the Viet Cong perspective, since you have stories about not just about Allied people in World War II. You have songs about Germans.
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to do 2 or 3 sides. Like we're doing 3 episodes about Soldier of 3 Armies now. It would be so interesting to do the same thing, but musically, to cover events from the same event. From different perspectives would be really interesting music.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
I guess.
Well,
and there's so much tie-ins you can do musically as well.
Yeah.
You could build the music as, or you could have the pre-chorus the same from both songs, but modulated. One could be in minor key, one could be in a major key, so they're sort of hinting at each other.
And the major key one could have the bagpipes, just like like Staticburg. I'll never forget that. That's the only song that you wrote in a major key. Hey, but I did want to ask you about the actual song, because in the other episodes, we didn't really talk much about the songwriting or how it was constructed or who it was with. Was this something you started with lyrics and then did the music, or you had the song sitting around, or how did this work?
We started with the music, and it's a bit of a different one, because I remember I was going to Falun, or hometown basically, and about to write some music. And I was planning to write with one of our old time writing partners, and people kept canceling on me. So I thought, what the hell? I'll go to Fallen anyway. And just on a whim, like 2 days before, I got in touch with Tuba. We decided that let's try and see if we can write a song together, you know?
And maybe they don't know who Tobe is. Can you tell them?
Yeah. So Tuba is our previous guitar player. He was in the band from 2012 until 2016, if I'm not mistaken. And this is in 2014. The thing with songwriters, I mean, I knew he could write music. He'd written stuff before, but you never know if you're compatible as songwriters.
Sure.
It's kind of a fond memory for me, this one, because it's on this song we found out that we are compatible as songwriters. I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise. We're almost the same age. We like the same kind of classical 80s hard rock and metal. It actually started with me and Tub not knowing where to start. And he started riffing. It's sort of I think we started with kind of the intro riff and we modified it. It was a little bit too much Judas Priest. I mean, there's still a bit of Judas Priest in there today.
What's wrong with Judas Priest?
A great band, band we both love. Actually, it was a quick process and a really nice one.
Did you write the lyrics yourself, though, or did he help you with the lyrics later? Or was that just you or you and Per?
That was me alone, I think. Could be me and Per, but I think I wrote this one myself. Actually, not sure. You're going to have to look it up in the credits, anyone who's watching this, if you want to know.
From the Finnish lakes to Germany, all the wars we came across.
And now we've just spent 3 episodes telling the story. This is fun, our first trilogy. Thank you very much once again for watching Sabaton History.
Thank you very much, and see you next week.
See you next week.
All right. You know what's coming now? It's me asking you for money. So, money, give me all your money.
Okay, so that was part 3 of Soldier of 3 Armies. This was a really great Sabaton History series. What a crazy life that this guy had. I mean, man, think about how many of the massive parts of history of the last century that he was involved in. Like, that he was actually there on the ground involved in. It's just, it's really kind of crazy. But yeah, this was a really good one. Like I said, I'm going to try to get my moral question video out later today. But as always, like, comment, subscribe. Help me keep building the channel over here. I will put the Discord link down below if you want to continue these conversations over there. And I will see you all next time.